Hi, Rangdeep. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. We'll just wait for other participants to join, and then we can start off. Can you hear me? Please let me know if you can hear me. Hi, Anthony. We'll just give a couple more minutes for registrants to join, and then we'll kick off. While we wait for others to join, I'll just introduce myself. So I'm a technical consultant here at UiPath. I work with prospects and customers trying to understand what their use cases are and help them in their automation journey. I work on different projects here at UiPath, and Test Suite is one of them. I'm really excited to show you its capabilities and field any questions you may have around Test Suite, Test Manager, and Test Robots. Feel free to introduce yourselves by either unmuting yourself if you have access to audio, video, or messaging it on the chat. Nice to meet you, Anthony. What do you do, and where are you from? Oh, that's nice. That's good to know. Okay. Have you have experience working on any UiPath products? Okay. All right, we have hit the 5-minute mark. I'll start the presentation. Feel free to ask your questions on the chat whenever you have. I'll try and switch between the windows to see if there are any questions and try and answer them. To introduce Test Manager, before I do that, I hope, Rangdit, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, but I hope you have or you're familiar with what RPA is and you've used RPA technology before. If you have not, and if you want me to give an introduction of the RPA technology, please let me know. And I assume, Anthony, that you're familiar with this, so you're just interested in the Test Suite offering from UiPath. Okay. All right. So basically, what is UiPath Test Manager? Uh, while we started as an RPA company, now what we realized is a lot of our customers are or were asking if they could also use this for testing purpose, and they were trying to use the bots in some capacity to do that as well. That's because the technology allows us to look at uh, screens, look at messages on the screens, extract information, retrieve those values from applications, and validate that data. So, is it possible to create these as test cases and run them as test sets, measure the outcome as to whether they're passed or failed, and as an extension, if we can uh, basically create a defect in any project management application or test management software, then that would really be nice. So we have listened and we have heard and we have implemented, and this is the end result of that exercise. I'll walk you through all the features that's available in Test Manager and how you could use it to do RPA testing as well as application testing. This session primarily focuses on what components comprise of what Test Manager comprises of, what are the components, and how would you use them. I'll also have a demo at the end and share some resources that will help you start using Test Suite. All right. So where do we? What's the objective again? Earlier, we used to have waterfall methodologies that was widely adopted in releasing any software, and a stage in that exercise or in that life cycle was testing, where you would focus primarily on creating those test cases at the time of design, and at the time of execution you would also have to factor in regression tests. It involved UI testing, UAT testing, data-driven testing, and all of those. But now with the shift to agile methodologies, everything has become part of a continuous feedback loop. So back in 2008, DevOps was launched, and the continuous deployment and continuous integration was a key term that's started from there. And from then on, we have a suite of activities, a lot of steps that actually are working in tandem, and continuously we have iterative releases to software. So where do we actually test? We test in almost every stage. So even when you're planning, you actually plan what the data would look like, what the test cases will be. While you're designing, you will categorize those test cases into test sets and plan for executing them at the time of releases. With the advent of DevOps and continuous integration and deployment, you can actually have your bots trigger and run as and when there's a new release, whether it comprises of just bug fixes, whether you're releasing a new feature to a particular software. You can design and build automations that would run as test cases to test that particular specific functionality. Uh, and we have test manager is similar to what you would call as orchestrator to manage the bots. So in test manager, you can basically manage all the test cases that you have built using UiPath Studio. You can group them into test sets, such as that. Let's say you have a use case where you're logging into a particular application, that becomes one of your test cases. Then you're navigating to a specific page or a section within the application, that becomes your second test case. And then in the third, you're retrieving some values, either it be some confirmation message or an acceptance message when you perform certain actions on the UI, or it's validating the information based on the calculations your application does when you enter some data. So all of these can be grouped into a test set, and you can execute those test sets and then also uh, get to the results and evaluate how your tests have been performing. So that was the idea and the goal behind releasing Test Manager. Now, at a high level, The test manager sits alongside your studio which is used to build your automations. Now you'll have the same user interface, the same experience to build test cases as well. You can also convert an existing automation that you have built in Studio into a test case by just right clicking that file and converting it into a test case, marking it as a publishable test case, and publishing it to Orchestrator. Uh, Obviously, to run these tests, you would need robots. While you could have used unattended bots to run them, because the test cases are fairly triggered on demand, and there are far too many when you have to do regression tests. Uh, Running them on unattended licenses was a little bit expensive. So UiPath have come up with a robot SKU license, which is 5 times cheaper compared to an unattended bot. And in order to manage those test robots, again, you can use Orchestrator to manage them. So that's where you would distribute your tests, your test sets, your monitor what the outcome of your test executions are, specify which test robot to run, and configure your licenses. Now, what can you actually test using UiPath or using the test suite? So at a really high level, it's agnostic of any application, be it a web application, be it a desktop application. You can also do API automation testing. You can do mobile automation testing, and it supports continuous integration and deployment. You can also connect it to a version control that you're using, thus allowing you to basically run tests as and when there's a new check-in. What type of testing can you actually address using test manager? So regression test, exploratory testing, manual testing, you can integrate them with your existing ALM tools, whether you're using Jira or Redmine or any of your project management or test management software, which offers APIs. You could use test manager to connect to those. Uh, let's look at how that would work. So you'd have your UiPath Studio Pro, UiPath Orchestrator, and UiPath Robots on the UiPath platform. Now you can do integration with Azure DevOps or Jenkins or any other tool that you may have, or you may be using for your software development lifecycle or test management lifecycle. You could connect to other applications such as SAP or ServiceNow to log defects or create a ticket in the what the test robots are capable of also doing is taking a screenshot when a test case passes or fails, thus allowing you to also verify what the bots are doing. Obviously, they will indicate whether it passed or failed based on the conditions that you specify, and it's not just one condition uh, uh, that you can create. You can actually stack up multiple conditions within your execution block. We'll quickly look at that in the Studio Pro. So how do we actually integrate with other applications, and what can you perform within the test manager? Well, let's say if you're coming from a testing background, ideally you would create test cases, group them into test sets based on the requirements for that specific sprint or for that specific release cycle. And then you manage those tests by grouping them into test sets or mapping them to the requirements that are in the current sprint. And then you can build automations for those tests that you have identified. You would use Studio Pro, UiPath Studio, to build those automations, and you'll publish those tests to Orchestrator in UiPath Orchestrator. So those are the bare minimum that you would need, in addition to the test robots where you would execute your tests. To analyze these results, you could either use UiPath Test Manager to manage the tests as well as analyze, or you could also have them in the external ALM tool that you might be using the test manager as the link between your UiPath test cases and executions. Uh, so That's what the test manager gives. So it gives you the option to either manage your tests and evaluate and analyze the results within UiPath Test Manager, or if you're already familiar with an external ALM tool, you could also do that outside. So you have that flexibility. Um, what else? How do we support documenting your existing requirements? If you're familiar with task capture, well and good. Otherwise, that's another tool that UiPath offers for free, which will allow you to record your steps. So you just have a button which says start capture, and you can capture a particular process by just doing your operations on the applications that you normally would. And task capture sits and takes a screenshot of every action that you perform on a particular application, be it a mouse click or a keystroke. It will capture that, and then it generates a nice workflow for you. You can introduce decision points within that workflow. You can use any of the BPNM notations or VCO diagrams, including swim lanes, to create a process definition document. And once you capture all of those, you can map it as a requirement within Test Manager, and then basically distribute all of your automated test cases, and then execute those. Task capture also allows you to export your captured steps into a UiPath's automation file. So that file is a XAML. It has a XAML extension, and when you open it in UiPath Studio, you will basically have a skeleton of your automation bot, which you can convert into a test case, and you can make all static values into dynamic by creating parameters and arguments. For example, if you have entered, excuse me, if you have entered John or Jane Doe, you may want to have a particular data set which will act as your test data. Now that test data can be a structured Excel or a CSV file. It can be any external data source. You can connect it to your test case, and automatically it will iterate through each of those rows of data. While importing that data, you can also specify which particular rows the test need to run on. So you have complete control on how many executions need to happen per test execution cycle. As for reporting, what do we support? Obviously, these are all test uh, terms, but you will be able to measure the effort that was spent by the test robots on executing those test cases, how many of those tests passed or failed, what is the coverage of all your automation test cases, depending on the input values. You can look at the team metrics, uh, the process, the entire process that you have defined. You can walk through the defects. You can also deep dive and select a particular defect and see what exactly happened with the help of the screenshots that the bots take. And then once you have all of this data captured, you can export it into CSV, or you can connect it to any of your existing reporting tools such as Tableau, Power BI, or even UiPath Insights, which is similar to Tableau and Power BI, or you could export it into an CSV and open it in Excel and um, do some pivot charts and graphs to uh, create executive level charts and graphs and dashboards for you. There are few templates available on UiPath Marketplace. You can go and explore uh, what's available and use it if you like it. Quickly switch and see if there are any questions for me. No. All right. What we also allow is with the way the RPA, sorry, the test manager is implemented, you could scale your what we say testing uh, based on your requirements. If you want to add additional test robots or build more test cases such that they run in parallel, you could basically add more test robots. So the scaling is taken care of. We offer SaaS-based solution. You can have test robots on your on-prem virtual machines as well, and that that basically allows you to uh, start small and then scale higher and bigger depending on how many feature sets you release. As you add more features or bug fixes to your existing releases, you would want to do regression tests for all of those features, and it's always an ever increasing, ever growing set of test cases as part of regression. So you could start with one or two test robots and add two more. So if there are any other dependencies on third-party applications which have APIs exposed, you could make it part of your testing as well. What kind of customization that does Test Manager offer? Well, there are certain activities within Studio that you can use. So if and as and when there are events within your complete test lifecycle, based on those events, you can actually trigger the bots to do any of these tasks, such as mark a particular regression test as failed. If a defect is created, you could basically notify your existing applications or ALM tools that you use if anything has changed with regards to your test case, if the status has changed or if a new requirement has been added. Then you can either fire a robot to do something, or if something happened in the robot, it's a two-way communication that's been established. So you can have all of these tasks created based on the events that happen, and Test Manager supports notifications whenever any of these events happen. If you're familiar with UiPath Action Center, that's a place where tasks are created for humans in use cases where a human needs to be brought in the loop, let's say for either a review or an approval, or to input some data that the bot will need. Then while you're testing, if you want somebody to act on that particular information, let's say to either review what happened in the underlying application, why a particular test case failed on repeated executions, you can create a task in the Action Center and notify them with a link to their task in Action Center, and the human can come and review what happened. So where are some of the use cases where you could or how else could you use Test Manager, and with what can you integrate? So we have several of different other UiPath products that you can leverage. So you could use test management with chatbots. You could, if you're familiar with UiPath's process mining, which is to uncover any process or any bottlenecks within the process by hooking to any of your ERP or CRM systems, then you could do some data-driven testing to understand or measure the risk with the way you have implemented a particular use case within those ERP or CRM tools. That's one area. You can use UiPath Insights, which is similar to Tableau or Power BI, to integrate any of your reporting requirements. And obviously, you can also use Test Manager or Test Suite to test your RPA automations. If you have created some automations and you may want to test those before you deploy to production, you could use the test robots to test your RPA automations as well. It's time for a short demo of using Test Manager. Let me see if I can stop sharing and share again. Sorry, I really hope that you can hear the audio as well. If one of you could please confirm, I'll just continue. Sorry, Jishan, if you couldn't hear it, I will share these links. These are public facing videos, so I'll share the link to the specific video as well as to a playlist which has several videos on UiPath Test Suite. So that's the link to the video that you just saw. And here's the link to the complete UiPath Test Suite playlist. Any questions from any of you? That basically concludes the session for today. I'm happy to stay for a couple of minutes to field any questions from you all. You're welcome, Zishan. You're welcome, Anthony. As for the licensing, well, the test manager has a license. It depends on the region, but at a high level, it's 9,000 US dollars for the test manager. The test robots come for 2,000 US dollars per robot. And then you have a license for test users if they need access to the test manager to manage the test cases and view the results, and that comes for about 900 USD. However, please feel free to reach out to any of the account executives. They will package it into something that's suiting your expectations, and these are all go-to-market rates. You might get some discounts if you talk to any of our sales executives or through our partners. And all of these rates that I mentioned are per year, so it's a yearly subscription. And the pricing remains the same, whether it's on-prem or whether it's on cloud or if it's on your preferred cloud. Yes, that's correct. So the test robots are primarily designed to run only test cases. If you try to run an RPA process on a test robot, it will give an error saying this is not a test case. That's your right. So you cannot like schedule tests to be run at a particular time, which is an unattended robot's job. However, the automations that you build for unattended bots can be converted into a test case and be executed as a test case on a test robot. You're welcome. So if you are, it depends on what you actually want to do. If you just want to make sure that the automation, the business, where you have automated business workflow, and you just want to test it in a non-production environment before publishing it to production, you could use a non-production robot. So that license of a non-production robot is fairly cheaper than even a test robot. It comes for 550 USD. That's for a non-production robot. If you wanted to explicitly test your applications or your RPA automations, that's when you would use test robots for regression tests, UI-based tests, and all of that. Any other questions? Hi, Nafat. I just noticed that you just joined. We have concluded the session. We do run these sessions very regularly, so please register for an upcoming session on Test Manager and Test Suite. But I'm happy to stay and answer any questions you may have. Please post your questions on the chat as you may not be able to speak. Okay, if you have no further questions, that concludes our session. Thank you for attending. Please do see what other sessions are available in the upcoming weeks. There's a what we say, there's a competition as well. If you follow those steps within the description, you might be eligible to receive a $50 gift card. So make good use of it. Yes, Nafat, let me see when is our next session for Test Suite. Just give me one moment while I pull up the events calendar to see if anything is upcoming. There's one on the 5th of October. Let me tell you the time as well. It's at 2 p.m. Australian time. May I ask from which region are you? Yeah, sure. So let me actually give you the link to that specific session. You can register now, and then you'll be able to set yourself a calendar reminder. Here's the link for the upcoming session on the 5th of October. Thank you, Nafat. Thank you, Anthony and Ron Date. I hope I got your name correct again, but thanks for attending. If you have no further questions, I will end the session. Have a good day. Cheers. Bye.